Present day. I wake up the next morning refreshed, with only the mildest of hangovers from my bender that previous evening. Since school is off for Thanksgiving, I even take the liberty of staying in my bed till late in the morning. This is the time I can remember since the incident in the cave that I've slept through that night without any nightmares. Still, it's a terrible thing to think about. But maybe Gabe was right by facing my fears. I may eventually be able to conquer them and come to grips as to what happened. Maybe I'll even be able to attach some kind of meaning purpose for them. Obviously, I came out of my coma after the destruction of the command post. It was about 2 weeks later when I woke up. I woke up screaming in a military hospital in Germany. It was another 3 days before I was calm enough for the doctors to remove the restraints. I talked to some professional military police were hoping and getting a few details from the events from me. They filled me in on what they knew. Basically, once my outpost had been missed, it was check-in. My commander spun up one of its sister platoons to patrol over and see what's going on. What they found was me lying naked and unconscious in the middle of the destroyed patrol base. By the looks of things, the bomb had gone off and destroyed everything about a quarter of a mile away from the direction, including 10 houses, a mosaic, and a local police station. Miraculously, I was the lone survivor. My only injury was 3 deep gashes down my right shoulder blade. I told the MPs the whole story of what happened in the cave and about the giant centipede monster, the Relic, half my platoon being devoured, and the other half slaughtered during Tahari's betrayal. Not surprisingly, if they hadn't believed me. Equally unsurprising, neither did the next group of MPs that talked to me. The International Affairs Investigators, my commander, and at least 3 different psychologists. They had to analyze me. Everyone's best guess of what actually went down, that Tahari came into the base. He turned his coat and set off the massive bomb, and everyone evaporized, neat, easy, and much further within the realm of rational reasonable. I tried pulling out the inconsonance of what the narrative, at the very least, to get someone to go and try and find the cave to collaborate my story. But ultimately, it was just too crazy. No one would listen. At the end, the doctors and psychologists slapped me with a traumatic brain injury label, and 9 months later, I was out of that army in a horrible discharge and 20% disability. And crippling self-doubt. Oh, that's how I question myself. Having a dozen professionals tell you again and again on what you're saying is impossible. How there is no chance on the earth that things happened the way you think they did starts to wear on your resolve afterwards. For a time I managed to convince myself that the whole thing was actually a lie cooked up in my mind from the shock. But I always came back to my dreams and the screaming and the scars. The one piece of evidence I would have had that truly helped me convince everyone my story was, of course, the relic itself. But it was never found. I managed to talk to my fellow platoon leader, Lieutenant McCartney, who found me lying in the rubble. He told me truthfully neither he nor any of his men had seen anything resembling the stone I had described. He's a good man and had absolutely no reason to lie about something like so that again. More questions were raised than answers. It's possible they simply missed it in the wreckage, or that it was somehow destroyed in the blast, but in my gut I know that it's not the case. Somehow someone took the things out of my conscious grasp for their own purposes. Who and for or what, I can only imagine. I can only make a fresh pot of coffee to deal with the lingering hangover effects and sit down at my kitchen table. The sun is streaming through my window over the sink and I take a deep breath. drinking the aromatic smell of the brew and finding myself truly relaxed for what it seems to be the first time in a long time. There was a knock on my door. I jumped so fast I knocked over my chair backwards. I take 2 steps and dive across the hallway into the bedroom. Grabbing my Glock from the nightstand, ferociously I crept down the living room and into my position, get ready with the next to my slab of the door. I held the gun ready and the sounds knock again, this time accompanied by a voice. "Mr. Landry, you there?" A voice was speaking of a female, and it sounded tired, more than anxious. I moved to look through the peephole and see a woman figure holding a sleeping child standing in front of the entryway. The kid looks to be about 6 years old, and the woman, a brunette, has bags under her eyes as if she hadn't slept in days, but those haven't kept me realizing how remarkably attractive she is. I shouted through the door, "Who are you, lady, and what do you want?" "My name is Sarah Wilder, and something terrible happened to my husband. I have a reason to believe it's coming from me and my daughter next. Please, Mr. Landry, I was told that you could help me." "Yeah? Who told you that?" "A woman, some psychic. It sounds crazy, but she contacted me out of the blue. Before anything started to happen, she said to me that I needed help and that you'd be able to give it to me." "I didn't know any psychics, Miss Wilder. And you're right, that does sound crazy. Sorry that I'm not to be able to take you on faith here. She said you'd probably say that, but she also said to show this." A piece of paper slides under the crack of the door. I bent it to pick it up, and it was a computer printout of a photo lying on the table. It was grainy, but there was no mistaking it, a round stone there, about the size of a $50. A smooth but slightly raised bump in its exact center, the relic. Shit. I disengaged the lock and struggles to heave the door open. The woman squeezed through with her child, and I close-locked the door behind her again. The kid hasn't stirred throughout this and must be completely exhausted. "Thank you so much, Mr. Landry. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me." Yes, ma'am. I have a feeling that fear hasn't started yet. Let's put the kid down and get you a chair and some coffee. Then you can tell me what's happened from the beginning." Wow, that was certainly a long creepypasta. And that, my little pretties, was The Soldier, a military creepypasta written by Shadowswimmer77. My final thoughts on this story? I actually really enjoyed this story. I actually really loved it. This is actually a pretty well-made creepypasta. So I'm not gonna lie when I sit here and say this, is that I actually really enjoyed this story, especially with, the concept. I really liked how well made the story is. Even though it's a long story, it's a beautiful, well-made military creepypasta. I can say for myself that I honestly saw how really well made this story is. And I think I first encountered this story, I believe, was 2017 or something. But I wasn't really that interested in the story for some reason back then. And about just recently, I started listening to the narration by Nature's Temper, as well as creepy ghost stories. I did see a couple of her narrations of this story, and I gotta say, this story was honestly well made in detail, and it's a pretty good story. So basically, this is like a military story, but it's involving a monster. It honestly keeps me on edge of the story. Whatever this creature was that was killing, certain people and that. I mean, that's pretty epic. I would really have to say that this one honestly was well made. The ending of it was pretty well made and done. I really liked how the protagonist of the story went back, recollected everything, and even brought the centipede part But I also really would have to like that this story, it's actually one of the longest creepypastas I've seen. But I mean, I've seen other ones too, so there's definitely that. Now, even with that being the case, it's a really great story. I honestly found the concept to be well made, as well as the good grammar, the sentence structuring, and I definitely love the time and effort into the story. I especially like the fact that, everything's in full detail, and that the protagonist who's telling the story goes back at certain times, recollect what happened. I mean, that is honestly something that I don't see much in creepypastas, or very little of it. That's honestly something that doesn't really happen often in creepypastas. Yeah, there are a couple stories that does this, but not really many creepypastas manage to do that, actually. And that's something I'm definitely saying right now. But I definitely would have to say right now, this is honestly a well-made story, especially with the whole time and effort that was put into the story. It's really well made. I mean, the author of the story should be proud of himself or herself for the time and effort that he or she put into the story, especially with, the storyline of its own self, the good grammar. I mean, I honestly love the plot line of the story, and it's really well made. I definitely would just have to say that this story honestly it actually works. I mean, it's a long story, but I actually found this to be very enjoyable. Now, I can definitely say right now that if you guys want to find a good military creepypasta, this story is your go-to. It's actually one of the fewer creepypastas that manages to, do a whole lot, and actually manages to put stuff together in a sense to make it more believable, if that makes any sense. But yet again, I mean, I don't really know about the whole centipede monster thing. I know it's pretty much just fictional, as there's no no centipede monster or whatever it's described into it. But I mean, it's still a well made story nevertheless. Anyways, I mean, I don't really have anything to say that I did not like about this story. I can't seem to find anything that I don't like about this story. I honestly really like it. It's a long story, but it's still a really well made story. So the author has to be, well, pretty much happy of him or herself for writing this story. And to the author, if you're watching this, awesome job with this story. Keep up the good work. And I mean, I might decide to read your other stories if I ever get the time. Anyways, with that being said, let me get to my final rating of this story. Now, like I'm just gonna say, this is simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these creepypastas, and this is just simply my own personal thoughts. My final rating of this story is a 10 out of 10. Beautiful, well made. It's a perfect, well made military creepypasta. There's definitely good plot to this story. There's definitely a lot of time and effort. There's definitely a lot of stuff with this story that I really gotta say that is flat out amazing. And if any of you guys are interested in reading this story, I recommend you go look at this story up on the Creepypasta Wiki. You guys will not be disappointed once you have a look at that. So I recommend you go look on the Creepypasta Wiki, read for the entire story, and you will not be disappointed because it's beautiful, well made, definitely a lot of time and, oh, pardon me, definitely a lot of time and effort, and I definitely recommend reading it, especially if you're next time you're on the Creepypasta Fandom Wiki. So anyways, what did you guys think about this creepypasta? Did you all enjoy it? Did you all not? Also, what would you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you're new to this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. Don't forget to ring the notification bell to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.